In this episode of Van Build Stories, I travelled from Stockport to Sheffield to speak with Jerome from Roamerworld. I wanted to ask how the van build scene is changing, along with customers' budgets, market pressures and customers' desires. I know, yeah. I've been getting a bit of work out of it, really. It's been alright. It's kind of... I didn't really want to spend that much on a camera, but actually what it's allowed me to do is just been able to get something out of the box without putting a gimbal on it and all the rest of it.
It's kind of like everything, isn't it? You kind of put a bit of coin behind something and it's like, oh, it does everything you need it to do.
Pretty much, yeah.
You're like,
yeah.
Why not?
I think as well, it's a bit of kidology in like I've got a Lumix as well that I use, but it doesn't look the part. Whereas when people see that, it's like oh yeah, I'll get this guy. Yeah. This guy looks like he's got a good camera. Get into film things.
We actually once thought about doing a skit in like car boot sales, but like building a camera like of cardboard that looked amazing. A ridiculous camera and seeing what you get people to do. Yeah. You know.
Thanks for having me over.
Anytime.
As all van converters, it's like you're a million miles an hour and everything's going very, very fast and you have very little time. So we've got a common customer.
Correct.
Who they've had a Clayton unit and you're building it. It's your first fitting of a Clayton unit.
That's right, yeah.
So normally you're using Victron kit and all the rest of it, and weirdly sometimes people think I've got something against Victron, and that's not the case. I think it's...
I like how you have to like stipulate that.
I stipulate that straight away. Like I've definitely not got anything against Victron at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been interesting sort of having conversations and trying to work out where things are going to go and what have you. And I've just been impressed by everything you guys have done. I've been following you online for a while now, and then I seen what you was doing with the stainless steel trays, and then looking at the vans that you've got in today, and then looking at this which I'd seen online. Yeah. The quality's unreal on the finish.
Appreciate it. Yeah, no, you know.
So I mean, start there really. I think this kind of there's almost like a separation between the guys that are building things over and over again, and they're doing a lot of things like
repeat things.
Yeah. Whereas you guys are doing a lot of bespoke work. So how are you finding constantly doing bespoke work?
It's tough, obviously, because everything is a custom product. Do you know what I mean? And we try and keep it. We've been trying to keep it that way because it just offers a really good outlet from a creativity perspective. Because myself and the guys that we have as like staff, they kind of just want to build things, and we work in a bit of a silo. And we've been fortunate enough from when we kind of started Roamerworld to where we are now to have great clients that are up for letting us kind of with their combined input, because it's very much about like working together for towards like a greater good type thing. But we've had great customers, clients with great ideas, fundamental ideas that we can ultimately build on and hone how we've been working. Do you know what I mean? And it's kind of testament to like the staff that we have next door and in here that they really give a shit. You know what I mean? Like it's one of those things where our stuff takes a long time. There's no denying that that's the case, but it's because we aren't just kind of printing everything. We have to think about it, and it's very much you can go so far with a plan on paper, then you build it, and then you realise actually that door is going to impact X or Y, and you have to readjust. So things take a bit of time, but for the most part, it's a lot of what we like doing. It's like a really aggressive game of chess all the time, trying to fit these pieces together. But it's kind of how it's weird. We don't know anything else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like people come to us all the time, and they're like, "What, you guys don't have a CNC machine?" And we were like, "What the fuck?" Like, no. Do you know what I mean?
Well,
like
I must admit, I'm coming out, I'm like,
yeah,
where's the CNC machine? Yeah. I'm like, there's a lot of holes in all the pieces of wood that you make. There's lots of lines, and I'm thinking, where's the CNC machine? Because I seen you guys, with your amazing Festool tools and what have you, putting some lines and things, and I was thinking, is that then just finishing things because there's certain parts that can't be done with the CNC machine, and then I realised...
Do you know what? It kind of is, it's a bit of both, because not doing things on the CNC machine currently for us enables us to change things quite quickly. You know, like if we can build things on the fly and as we go, and that ultimately lends itself quite nicely to how we work and how our stuff comes to life. And it's weird, it's both a blessing and a curse not having one, because ultimately the whole idea of a CNC machine is that it saves time. In some instances, once it's paid for itself, it saves money, but there's no secret in that we want one or that we like one, and we're working to get one for some of the repeatable pieces that we do. But right now we're very much in a space where we're quite happy. Not happy, I say happy, like we're all cutting. Like, but we're happy, we are. It's a manual job currently, and I think that comes together in how we make things, which is important.
I think it's an interesting one. One second, I'm just going to make sure. I've noticed we're bobbing about a little bit. You see, it's wobbling. I think we'll be all right if we don't move about too much. But I think we'll be all right, because I don't want to change it. It's quite nice. Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's quite. It's
I won't move anymore.
I was over at Ape last week, and you know, he's doing these like amazing like topography type fronts. So I thought he'd have this massive CNC machine. It wasn't. It was a really small CNC machine, and it's amazing what you can do on even the smaller ones. But I suppose you're then into the thing of, well, do we get something where it changes the router blades?
Also tool changes.
There's a lot of sort of things to consider then in terms of that, and how much you invest, 100%. How big it needs to be. I think what happens then is like people lean towards like trying to make their own kit and resell the kit, but then you split between, are we making vans, are we making kits?
It's weird, isn't it? I think there's a really happy medium to be found somewhere in between, because I know we chatted before, speaking on the camera now, but like trying to find a genuine balance where you're like, I'm really enjoying what I'm doing, but we also financially feel more stable. Because I'd be lying if I said that, you know, we do have nice tools, but that's come out of like, it's not, we haven't just bought those, you know, we've worked to kind of get to that stage and purchase things as we go. CNC machines by design are expensive pieces of kit. They have to have a zone that is usually soundproofed, because it's a nightmare, but it has to, there's a whole upskilling staff, myself included, the machinery to run those things. And you're right, you can kind of get stuff that's like smaller, and that still does a really good job. Andy's a really good example of that. But again, what do we need? When do we need it? How much do we need it to do? And it's all like, you kind of only find out when you've bought something, and you're like, oh shit, we needed that 10 grand extra thing, like, which we now know we don't have. But some of the contract work that I did on the brand and marketing side of thing, I was working for a really high-end bathrooms company, and they make basins, so everything's CNC'd out of solid surface. And in the new place, the CNC machine was off and running, and there was like 3 levels of sound, like natural soundproofing in terms of rooms, but even in the back room, it was just not a thing.
It's like a dentist drill. It was like just you know, it's not an easy thing to ignore.
No, you got if you're going in, you've got to commit to this thing, and you're going to know that it's going to be a disruption, and it offsets itself by like, you might be able to leave an hour earlier because shit's already done. But we've tried next door, like Workshop 1, we've got like curtains. They're like, you know, paper thin, but the job that they do is unbelievable. So it's little things like that, and making sure that if we do get a CNC, we don't piss everybody off. It's like, it's nice to like work in an environment where we can talk to each other over things. And then where's the balance coming on that? So
seeing what people are like online versus what people are like in the flesh, and I don't just mean your beautiful self, I'm talking about your actual environment. Turned up, car parks like great. I mean, I had quite a nice. I've had a nice journey over here. I've had a nice journey over here as well, like coming over through the countryside as well. But actually, you've got like plenty of parking. You've got full height rooms. All your tools have got a place. Like, it's a very neat environment. Like, it's a new building, this as well, in terms of the commercial environment.
But it's a strange one, because it was here before. The two brothers that own our kind of space knocked it down, rebuilt it. Really nice couple of lads, but it's just a purpose-built space. Like you say, it's 2 units, and they're built for what we need them to be for. Do you know what I mean? And having space in the yard, it's not just for, you know, people to come up. It's like being able to wheel something out and it be okay. Do you know what I mean? We don't have to worry about somebody else coming around and being like, shit, I need that space. It feels like we want it. It's weird, when we started the company, we had like a caravan inside a workshop, and that was like where we had lunch. And you know, you're like, shit, this is amazing at the time, and then you kind of grow through that. And it's nice that things are kind of evolving at the speed that they are. The same as the tools. Like, you know, we've gone through having tools that perhaps aren't as good, still capable of doing a job, you know, to be able to purchase those and use those daily. But the space is great. We take a lot of time to like sort it, you know what I mean? We're quite like, end of the day, there's a 15-minute thing where we're like, let's just drop everything and tidy up so that we can come in tomorrow and get shit done again, you know? And it's just things like that, you know?
It must speak volumes from again, I'll go into like, from a branding guy, coming in and seeing how clean the environment is and speaking to you guys, and everything feels very measured. Again, from a branding perspective, the kind of visual cues are going, these guys are going to do a good job. Yeah. So that environment, as probably time consuming it is that you've put the effort into the building itself, I think it must pay dividends.
It's testament to the fact that, you know, if our shit's in a mess, we're not, what do we care about? Do you know what I mean? So it's like, we try, like, why would we not want to be in an environment that is comfortable and makes sense? And you're right, it does. When people come up here, they're like, oh, it's a nice space. We're like, shit, let's keep it nice. I mean, because it's doing something for us. And then when we're building, we're ultimately able to build nicer things because we know where stuff is. You know, like we're never like. But it's weird because I wouldn't go. There's no like severe OCD here. It's just like, you know, like if we don't tie up on an evening, it's like, fuck it, we'll do it tomorrow.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Well, again, you know, I think again thinking about Ape.
Yeah.
He just looking at his work screams OCD. Looking at your work screams OCD. And I don't think that's the case. I think it is a sense of pride in doing 100%. Things right and doing it to a certain standard. Yeah. And when you get to a point where you're building, the base van's expensive.
100%.
Then you're building with expensive materials. Yeah. And that clientele's then looking for a certain standard, because when that van's finished, it's worth a lot of money.
Yeah.
So there's, it's almost like you've got to, once you go into that kind of level,
you have to sustain that.
Yeah, having Festool as a brand for your tools versus something else doesn't necessarily seem like an extravagance. It seems like you'd kind of expect it.
Yeah, 100%. And there aren't tools that can cut as nicely as a Festool can cut. You know, like it's less about it being a good brand. It's more about they are a good brand because they do good shit. It's weird because we start like everybody starts. You start somewhere, and you know, we started on vans that were like, if we take that nut off, we know we're never going to get that nut back on. You know, like 1964, like Iveco Daily, and we're like, shit, this thing is. We learned so much from doing these vans, and we'd always like look at ourselves and be like, shit, imagine like doing new vans. This was a couple of years ago, and now that's all we have. It's nice. It's also like, it's nice that we have that lineage. It's like we've not just arrived here with like some money. No disrespect to anybody that has done that, because I'm sure they have the skill set to do that. But it's almost like a rite of passage where you're kind of like, we've been under the van, like, in a t-shirt and pants because it's boiling and we can't cool anything down, and we're trying to like wrangle a fuel tank that we know is going to take 6 weeks to get back on. Do you know what I mean? Like, we've done the bits that are so nice now to be able to, like, we no longer need to worry about the mechanics of vehicles, which used to be a big thing. Like, having a small business, and probably much the same for you, like the worries of having a business, they never stop. They just change. They evolve into like, oh, 1 week you're like, shit, have we got enough work? And then the next is, can we do all the work we've now got? Or you know, it's weird. It's
I
roller coaster.
Going from kicking off about working on a 300,000 mile T5, which I love to bits, but every time you peel something back, you're like, oh. And again, working on, and as you get to cleaner, newer vans, it's brilliant. But there's then also this kind of dread of, this van's more expensive, like I can't make any mistakes, whether you're cutting a hole in it or, you know, removing something from it. So you've always got, as you say, it's just a different problem.
You have that at the start. It's weird. You kind of like, you're paralysed by the strategy of trying to build something. You're like, shit, can we do this? You know what I mean? And then you just bang one hole in and you're like, well, that is what it is now, you know, like, it's done. But you just, again, it's testament to just taking your time to do things, you know what I mean? Like, now, like, if we're putting a window in, we're going to put the window in exactly where it needs to go. There's not going to be, it's not going to be 1 mil left or what, it's going on. And that's just from doing it enough times and having the confidence to say that we're not worried. Because you know what I mean? Like, some things you can kind of put off. You put off jobs because you're like, shit, like, if that goes tits up, we're going to be down the creek. But you just got to chuck yourself, put your helmet on and just...
I wanted to ask you about, like, what you think of what is... It feels like, I mean, there's always a natural progression in any industry, but I do feel like in the leisure industry, it's starting to really mature, like over the last sort of maybe 5 or 6 years, we're moving into more expensive materials. I've started to notice a trend to more lightweight materials, or almost like the polar opposites, like really high quality. And I'm talking about this. You've got your standard kit type builds.
Yeah.
You know, your sort of T5 to T6.1s, whatever. But then in the higher market, it's either adventure vans and trying to go lightweight, or super quality materials, almost like a, you know, prestigious home. What's your general sort of view on the industry, and like what are you seeing in terms of like what customers are after and that kind of thing?
It's weird. I think what's us specifically, what's nice about perhaps what we're getting at the moment is a similar type of client, and they kind of understand usually quite clearly like the relationship between how function and aesthetic need to work. It's very rare that we have to like tell someone that doors can't open a certain way because they're going to hit another door, you know, like, so people that we're getting, clients that we're getting, and vehicles ultimately that we're getting, people, they just understand things more, which is nice. We obviously have to do quite a lot of back end work just planning and finessing those things, but like we're at a space now where people come to us because they know kind of what we're about. You know, when it comes to materials and lightweight over heavier stuff, we try to be conscious of what we're putting in for these reasons, like using composite boards with nicer veneers versus just like a generic kind of furniture board, for example, that obviously, you know, maintains lighter weight properties but looks like a more expensive board. We switch from birch now, but arguably as nice to finish, you know, because people come and they're like, oh, what stuff do you use? And then they'll rub their hands over a unit and they're like, wow, this is, how have you managed to do that without it being, you know, so that makes a big difference to us, like having something at the workshop when people come by and they can see what our work is like. By using those materials, they kind of get a good feel for it. On the whole, though, I think there is like a trend towards using nicer quality materials, kind of higher caliber or higher capacity electric setups. When it comes to, you know, being off-grid, people are more inclined, or we've been finding that they're more inclined to have a fully electric setup versus a gas setup, or a hybrid of the two. You know, the sun's not going anywhere anytime soon. Not that it's here that fucking much anyway. But like, you know, how do you maximize your kind of solar output? Like, what are those things? And people aren't worried about spending a bit more to maximize those things, and rightfully so, because when we talk to people about, you know, what this build's going to be for them, having their input, we always talk about like, and we're usually never sure whether or not to talk about it, but we always end up doing it like future-proofing your van in terms of like, if you were to want to go further away, or if you wanted to ever sell it, what does that mean, or how does that look? You know, what do you believe that next person might want and benefit from? It's quite important. It's quite an important part of the conversation. But going gas-free is just a thing, you know, like it's just one less thing to think about. I think it's important, you know what I mean? Less from a safety perspective, because you're not just going to do a some people, I'm assuming, do shitty jobs, but it's just one more thing to think about, and then one more thing to ultimately have to sign off or to check more regularly. So like negating that and having an electrical system that like Dave or Jane, I'm making these people up, can just be like, it's a button, you know what I mean? Like no disrespect to those guys, but it's become simpler, and that helps. I think it helps from just a peace of mind perspective.
So we've got a Truma 6E in our build, and you know, our build was a very different offering. It was like kind of how quick and how well can we build it without having to bespoke everything. And we, at the time, I didn't go with the diesel version of the Truma because it was a bit more expensive, and there was a few issues with that particular model. They've upgraded the diesel now, but I wish I'd have avoided gas. Yeah. And the tests that we did with the Clayton system and the induction cooking turned out a lot better than we thought. Okay. And that's just without an additional battery. That's just with the standard 160 amp hour. But yeah, like we've got the removable gas bottle. Yeah. Now we've got a gas place over the road from us, so it's dead easy to fill up. Yeah. But when in the Highlands, we struggled because there's a gas bottle swap scenario, and then the bottle that we had you couldn't swap. So I on the whole, I wish I'd have kind of pushed more down the diesel route and avoided gas. Yeah. But there's still a lot of people that like cooking on gas and still want to go with that thing. So it's a personal choice.
It's the same for everything in a van, isn't it? It's like you know, people want certain things, whether their previous experience dictates that or they've heard good things about X or Y, and it's it is what it is. It's pros and cons to every single thing that goes in or out of a van. I'm just talking specifically from like a build perspective, like the ease and the space that thing then frees up for you to use for something else. I totally see why people still have gas, like, because it's great as a primary heat source and a secondary heat source. You know, it can do so much, but at the same time, it's like you want your van to feel a certain way and for it to be as easy as pushing a button and you know that it's going to work. Not that gas is ever going to fail, but it's just like it's another thing.
It is another thing. There's this idea that we always had gas in our transporters and even in our hire vans we've got gas, and you know, you do everything you possibly can in terms of, you know, fewer joint connections and everything. So you do everything from a safety point of view. And then we've slept in those vans for ages, yet you do have this thing between, well, from a safety perspective and a less mess sort of like when you're building it, just do without it. Really, we've already got them in the vans and they've been fine. We've had very few issues. So I just think that's a natural push towards what people are seeing online on YouTube, you know, gasless. I think there's a trend towards that, and I think people sort of seem to want to spend a bit more money to kind of do without 100%. If possible.
Yeah, we actively say to clients, if you have the ability to, and it's not like it's difficult because you've got to gauge the scenario, and you don't always want to say, well, if you've got the money to do so, you know, do so, because not everybody has. But if you have the ability to just push that a little bit further, just double down on what the battery looks like, or how the invert, you know what I mean, and alleviate that whole pressure point, because you're right. I mean, I sleep in the attic on occasion, like if the little one's like doing my head in, and I'm always like, this boiler's sound. This boiler's sound. I wake up, I'm like, I'm always. But it's not like, you know, it's just.
It's one less problem to think about, basically, which is a perfect thing.
Yeah. But that's the same. This is a similar argument to like hot water and cold water. You could be like, cold water's fine. Yeah. You can kind of like, you know what I mean? Yeah. But it's just like there's a level now, I think, within the van building or community and industry where it's like there's certain things that are like they're always going to be nice to have because you're ultimately in a van. So having hot water, amazing. It's not too big of a jump to have hot water. Yes, you've got to pay a little bit extra to run hot water system you've got. But then things like, do we have a shower or don't we have a shower? If you've got the space, I think always have one, because it's like it's game changing, the ability to just have a shower. But at the same time, you know, you're in a van still. We just say to people, everything you want to put in, just be aware you may have to take something out to accept that. And normally when clients come to us, one of the first things we say is provide a list with like all of the things you absolutely must have, things that you would like, and things that you can kind of be like, that's whatever. And we'll just try and meet somewhere in the middle. Do you know what I mean?
Where are you willing to compromise, basically? Let's prioritise things that you really need at the top. And it's kind of like, where are you willing to compromise on these things down here? Because we found that, I mean, we nearly didn't put a shower in. In
your van?
Yeah, but it was the best thing we ever did. We tried to minimise the space because we've got 4 dogs. We did something with the design on the galley. But again, we took risks with that. We did a wet room type scenario with LVT versus, you know, beautiful stainless steel shower pan like you guys have got. So there were sort of risks that we took. The industry as a whole, van prices are going up.
As in like complete
in
vans
general,
or just
the actual base vehicles, So I think, is it I always forget this wrong, but is it the Atlantis kind of platform, which is like Renault, Fiat and all the rest of it, they share a platform. I think the average price of those has gone up by something like 6k on those vans. I
wouldn't know. But
the price on Volkswagen MAN TGEs, TGE Crafters has gone up quite a lot. We've been pricing up future hire vehicles and looking at what is now the transporter stroke transit platform, and whether we go for actually a Ford for the short term on some new ones that we want to order. And I feel like we're officially in a recession and all the rest of it, and van prices are going up, material prices are going up, and
let's get out now. Painting the picture there,
but
mate.
the thing is kind of, what I realise is that people really, since COVID, really love the outdoors. I think we're more connected to the outdoors. I think we're more connected to the freedom of having your own van and doing your own thing. Some of the best sort of
Yeah.
experiences in our lives, and the kids still love it to this day, is going over and spending time in Europe and doing those types of holidays.
I mean, like ultimately, like flying on a plane is gross. Like it's just a really awkward experience. Not just being on the plane, because like although kids are really excited about being on a plane for like 6 months, the moment they sit down, it's like, are we there yet? And can we get off? Do you know what I mean? So the whole going through the airport, not a thing. So
yeah,
it's awful.
I hate it. Yeah,
you know, being like on your own, like and going, great, best experience ever. With family, it's always just until you're there, it's just like, oh my god. But if you can make that bit fun. You know what I mean? Like the travelling in a van where you can see each other and you can have a chat. You're not like next to like somebody else and you can get to the window, and it's a no-brainer. And I think you're right. That experience is just, you can't really, there's not one like it really.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean? Taking all your stuff with you and ultimately being able to just stop on a journey that's, you know, you're going to France or whatever, you can stop as many times as you want, and there's something nice about that, and taking the time to do it. It doesn't show any signs of slowing in terms of those things might be happening, i.e. but vans are more expensive. I wouldn't know, I don't look back end.
Well, I think the way I sort of see it in terms of what's happening in the market is there's a lot of turbulence in the world at the moment, so we don't even know how long we're going to be able to travel into Europe and all the rest of it. So actually, let's not go down that hole, because that's a much bigger question. Yeah. But it's almost the way I see it is, people are striving to do camper van and motorhomes holiday more anyway. I think it was something that people, is now a sort of a new learned behaviour, like it's something I want to do. You've got people that are wanting to retire and chill out, and finally their dream is to get a motorhome. And now I think they're doing it in different ways. Rather than go for the white box, people are wanting to go for more adventure vans and that type of thing. Yeah. The swamper van, even in the really transit thing, has grown.
What's really, you're right. What's really interesting is the amount of people that we've had that have had and purchased some brand new camper vans from like leading like manufacturers in camper van, you know, like proper, what I'd consider like something that comes off a relative production line, getting in touch and being like, can you guys take everything out? Some of them are like 12-month-old vans, and redo them in a style that is more me, not me, but them. And we're always like, yeah, absolutely, like, because if it makes you feel a certain way when you're in there, because that's the point, right? Because not everybody buys a camper van or an adventure van to be like, all right, I'm going to Ben Nevis tomorrow. Do you know what I mean? Like, some people just want to go and park in a car park in Castleton in a nice environment, and that's fine, and do a small hike. And it's like, it's when you come back, you want to be in an environment that you ultimately are really happy in. Like, it's like your house, you know what I mean? Like, you're paying for this thing and you want to open a drawer and it closes a certain way. You've got all the things that are, you know, you're accustomed to at home in a small space that you're then driving around with all your shit with you. It's nice. I think there's no apparent signs of it slowing for us at the moment in terms of people getting in touch, which is nice.
There's definitely no slowdown from what I've seen, and I've owned a van. I've owned a van for a long time, but I've only just got into it as a business. Just after COVID, in terms of what we was doing in the van, so I'm relatively new. I know yours kind of
we're not like old,
new,
by any means as a company.
But I've seen no signs of it slowing down. And again, just touching on that, I think people seeing things on social media and realising there's a lot of hidden gems in the UK.
100%.
Like probably UK hidden gems is probably one of the social media posts that I love, because you find all these different places. Yeah. I think Europe as a whole, books like Wild Swim in France, those types of books are now allowing you to see the countries in a different way and find different areas. So instead of going to the coast, you're going to the lakes, rivers, waterfalls, and find. Then you got Park for Night, making the sort of the Europe feel more accessible.
100%.
And retention values, like, they're a good investment. Like the motorhomes are a good investment. It's like if you spend on a certain type of car, like I think an Audi A8, for example, is a luxury. You know, it's not an investment. It loses money like mad. Yeah. But if you look at a transporter or in general motorhomes, they really hold the value. Yeah. So you're spending money on something that's great for you in terms of your lifestyle and how you're spending your time. You're able to kind of use it more rather than a holiday home.
I mean, it makes total sense. I mean, and it's like it's accessibility. It's like you no longer have to go on one big holiday per year. You could go on 15. You know, every other week you go somewhere, and it's just the ability to be like, okay, it's the accessibility and the kind of spontaneity of the situation, you know, that make it a really beautiful thing. It's like you don't even have to go far. Like the goal is to just be out with your stuff and still feel comfortable. And I think there's something really nice about how accessible it is, and also you don't have to go and like planes are a thing. They're just not.
Yeah,
it's less environmental because that obviously does suck, but it's just the whole process of planes is just a really gross scenario. Do you know what I mean? It's like
so I flew for the first time in 5 years recently, and I have a bit of a phobia of flying anyway, which somehow weirdly got over on the last trip. But yeah, it's just not the same. Like we was in Spain, I was thinking, oh, I'd quite like to come in. Like we're walking about and finding like the car parks and the camping spots. And like, oh, this would be a top place to like come back in the van.
Yeah, you do that. Yeah.
So there's a whole load of factors. Even though the prices and everything are increasing, and almost like the standards people are wanting to achieve with the vans is increasing, it kind of still makes sense because it's a good investment.
100%. I think it does, and I think there's always if you haven't got however much money, you can tone it back as much. It's like buying a house. You know, some people can't. So what's the alternative? Like, what's the step down? And you can go right down to like having an air mattress in the car. Like, what are we doing this for? Is a big thing because it's like it's not like massaging our egos to like create great things. We do want to make things that people actually enjoy being outside in. They don't all need to be singing and dancing. They can literally just be like a vehicle to get you and your family outside more. It could ultimately just be a car, but you have now the ability to have other stuff in it, and like having nice things in it makes it more comfortable, and in some instances makes the whole experience a little bit more enjoyable, i.e. having a shower, stay out for longer, which is nice, you know, having the ability to cook, be it just a stove or whatever it might be. But just materials by design are never going to be cheap. They have to be made, they have to be, you know, and rightfully so in some instances because they're doing a lot of stuff. And I don't think there's like we've discussed, like if you can afford to just go that little extra bit further, what it does in terms of your ability to then experience more is like a big thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we found that like literally waking up in a camper van, and especially like in the summer, and then you're like somewhere beautiful and you just open the door, you get the coffee, and that feeling is just unbelievable. The fact that you almost feel like you're cheating.
100%.
This can be my little home 100%. For the weekend. I can live in, and then you're right. It's kind of the other little niceties, like a slightly more comfortable bed, and then it's like, well, I'd like a motorhome or a camper van that's got a bit more curb appeal.
Yeah.
I'd like a shower. Because I used to think you don't need a shower in a camper van. You know,
you do.
Wet wipes perfectly fine, but then once you've had a shower, you're like,
you do.
I get it now. I get it.
I think also, you know, you can spend. I think what's important about van, and we try and do it, like even little things, like we try really hard to not have a load of cable work in the walls. So a lot of it is like within the kicks of cabinetry and stuff, and you know, this is not new news to anybody, but the idea being there that people can kind of retrofit more stuff. You know what I mean? Like, we're not just giving them a thing that is like, okay, that's how that's always going to be. Like, the ability to like plug and play certain components is huge. You can't necessarily plug and play a shower. You can plug and play a shower, an external shower port, or whatever it might be. Small things, additional batteries, or you know, whatever that might be, is a valuable thing. You can then go further. So it's kind of again like future proofing.
I did that. So a lot of my cables. A lot of my overhead lockers have still got no backs in them because all the cables were on show, and I was like, everything I possibly do, it's my first big van build, I'm going to make sure that I've got access because I will make mistakes. And also I've had to kind of help some people with Clayton systems where they've made a mistake, and they'll be telling me something, and I'll be like, I think you need to just double check your wiring, make sure there's no pitches, and like, well, all the wiring's through the roof and it's like hidden, or it's like really, really, really tough to get into. So it's a small consideration, but it's massive.
It's, like things like lights, obviously they're in, for us they're definitely in the walls, but at the same time, like ensuring that AC can just be accessible for the most part. You know, of course there's plug sockets in the walls, but like just having the ability to put some more stuff in should you need it. And also even little things like cutting certain holes in certain ways, so you don't have to remove a unit, you can just push things through. Like they sound like they're the most simple things ever, but you know, the amount of holes I've seen that are like, you know, you've used a hole saw to create a hole, but you've put a pipe through it. Now you can only get that pipe out by cutting that pipe, as opposed to like being able to pull it out. You know what I mean? Like, things that I think are, you know, they're not smart by any means. They're just kind of like, okay, just it's when you're building anything, especially vans, it's like you're trying to be 3 or 4 steps ahead, and the more you do, the better at that you become. But then there's always stuff that gets chucked in the kind of mixer. You know what I mean?
I just wanted to touch on the Clayton system a little bit. So you'd never fitted one before. the customer was really keen on having a Clayton system. Straight away, if you've fitted Victron before and things like that, they'd be...
It was less about, just on that, sorry to jump in because I think it's important, but it was less about like being keen, more about what it would do for her and the size and space that we had, because I think that that's a really valuable thing. Not knowing the Clayton system personally and intimately at all, like its size is like, for us, it's game-changingly like dimensionally on, you know what I mean? It just is. But anyway, sorry.
No, I think that's where I was going with it really. It's just trying to sort of see your side of it from, you know, someone who has a lot of experience with Victron, just looking at that straight away, like what are your kind of snap decisions on things? So straight away you've said, well, actually the size is a benefit, and like the obvious one is, well, it's quite limited in terms of power, so you've got that problem. Yeah. When I was considering it, I was thinking, well, if something goes wrong, it's just a dead box type of thing,
like a 1 point failure thing.
Yeah. Which again, helping customers realised, actually, if there's a failure, we've had very few. We've sent a replacement. They've put the old one back in the box the next day and sent it back. So they've had like a total refit in a very short period of time. I think the other thing is there's been very few failures, so they've been really reliable. But I am aware that they are still quite new. They have had issues in terms of the batteries being slow to come out. So there's been a few sort of like, you know, expected dates, and then there's been a few delays, and that's because they're trying to perfect it. But yeah, is there anything else that you kind of seen as a sort of downside or as a...
I think to your point, it's the same as everything that's new in a space that's always had something else. Like it's like a, you know, like who's your new neighbour type thing.
Yeah.
You've got some people that have to kind of like be early adopters of said thing to just try and, you know, try it out. There seems to be enough out there for us now to be like, okay, when it makes sense, that's what will fit, you know what I mean? And I'm not going to pretend that we're just going to fit Claytons now, you know what I mean? Like Victron is still very much a product that we'll use, not just because it's good stuff, but also because the back end works for us. The individuals that we work with are spot on. But like when the build dictates that the Clayton system makes the most sense, then it absolutely does. It stands above and beyond what needs to go in there.
I think that's what I came up against in the forums. I was trying to say it's a viable option. I'm not saying it's better. I'm saying it's a viable option. Obviously, I've got skin in the game because I sell them and I build content around them. But that's only because I'm a fan. And that's what I was trying to get across on the forums. I'm like, it's just an option. Whereas
you can choose.
The knee-jerk reaction from the guys that fit Victron is to lean in and just slate it. I think the funny thing I used to always find is that they would straight away say, well, you can get a cheaper system. They'll shout the benefits of Victron around the fact it's tried and tested. And then they'll say, well, it can beat on cost. So then when you say, right, we'll run through it from a cost perspective, then they start throwing in cheaper items. So it's not Clayton versus Victron anymore. It's separates versus Clayton. And it's a sort of different argument. Because then it's
a different offering altogether.
Exactly.
In my opinion, it's not the. It's
totally different.
Depends entirely. Like you said, it's an option. Like there's so many out there. You know, whether it's who you're voting for politically, whatever it might be, you choose what does it do for you and why do you want it. There's space enough for both and more. Do you know what I mean? And it's just like, what do you need it to do? Do you have a small space? If you do, maybe this makes more sense because it still offers you X, Y, and Z. If you've got more space and you need the ability to, you know, register more things or be able to see things on the fly, maybe this is an option. We pose the question to clients. We say, okay, this thing exists, Ron is very much there, you know, what do you feel? Given the pros and cons of each, I'd be lying if I said we're in the very early stages of putting the Clayton system into the TG now, alongside a T6 Victron install. So they're both going on simultaneously. They both the clients require different things. Like it's less about one being better than the other. I have the argument about everything. You know what I mean?
I think I always try and I probably wind people up by saying, so they say, well, you put a cheaper brand battery in. I was like, well, could you go for a cheaper battery? Oh no, that's stupid. You know, it's almost like, well, they'll say, well, you can. The argument will be, you could go cheaper than a Clayton with a Victron system, but then switch out the battery and switch out the inverter. So I'm saying, okay, well, could you not go with a cheaper battery and cheaper inverter and make it even cheaper? And then the thing for me will be, well, don't be stupid.
Yeah, there's a limit, I think.
And I think that's the thing is, I think the biggest thing for me is it suits a certain purpose, and it is very small and lightweight and all the rest of it. It is incredibly easy to fit, but there are downsides compared to the separate system in terms of it's like there always is. And I think the same with me, like, you know, looking at lightweight boards versus incredibly beautiful finished board in terms of lightweight versus heavy. These all compromise, and it's all about like for instance, if you're not really up on electrics, but you want a really easy fit, then something like EcoFlow, Bluetti, Clayton, like an all-in-one system, starts to reduce the headache needed with that. But I think the way the Clayton tank changes it is that because it's a higher quality item, some of the quality van fitters, it all of a sudden becomes an option to them, and that's where it kind of throws it into a bit of a different sort of realm, I suppose.
I think what it's just, as with anything, and as you mentioned, it's just got a job to do in terms of like becoming less like household name. You know, like the more people slowly grow into that space, it will be a thing. It just isn't there yet because it just doesn't have that back end yet, and it doesn't have it because it's relatively new in that space. I know that it's been around in commercial vehicles in other capacities for a really long time, and you could argue that it's serving a pretty good purpose in places, and it has been doing for a long time without probably negligible small amounts of failure. But it's just whatever your need is, don't write it off. Ask the question, could that do it? If it can, great. If it can't, go another way. There should be no, in my opinion, there's no argument at all in terms of like I don't go on forums, wouldn't know, but I assume I see what the pros and cons would be to having an argument, but at the same time, like, surely whoever's having a conversation on those things must have at some point had a different one of like where they've had to make a decision. You know what I mean? Like, I mean,
they're dead interesting from a market research point of view anyway. Like you'll end up, you know, people are going about Victron, and then you'll see some other one person come in and go, well, Masterbolt's better anyway. All of a sudden, Victron versus Masterbolt are having arguments. So I'm like, okay, I'll just step away.
That's your point to leave.
Cool.
But that being said, I think it's important to know that we haven't fitted it yet.
Nope.
In you know, like in its current state. I mean, we don't have it actually. It's one of my. I need one, but I think once it's in, we'll have a better understanding of, like, you know, and the clients have access to it and can utilize it in the way that, you know. I think we've been given a really good overarching understanding of what it's capable of doing, and for that point, it stands its ground. Again, just to reinforce, a lot of the reasoning for us is space, available space,
and you know, the batteries are new. You will be one of the newer people that's using the batteries, and all that's got to be respected, I think. So it just will be interesting to see how you get on with it as a whole anyway.
Well, that's the thing. I think what's interesting this, we're not the type of people that are going to be like, this is dope if it's crap. We probably won't out it because I don't think that's the best way to do it. I think we just won't use it again. We'll explain why. You know what I mean? Like properly, as opposed to being like, things could be done to make it better, and that's across the board. We've had issues with Victron stuff for sure. You know, early on we used like a Renogy component. Obviously, things went wrong with that, and we had to, like, you know, you just learn and you choose and you grow into some new shit.
And I think what's good in terms of the consumers listening to the van builders is actually a consumer might fit one and go whatever brand or whatever thing it is and go, oh, that was amazing. But another 4 customers might have a problem. with it. Whereas with the van fitters, you're fitting them all the time, so you're starting to see which brands are reliable and what are not reliable, which is a very different thing.
I think a lot of we're not like massive like electric nerds at all. You know what I mean? So we lean into a lot of the Victron guys to not only like finesse our installs, but also just manage them back end from a kind of computer, you know, back end, and just making sure that everything optimized. And I have to say that currently, like, the setup of the 2 individuals that we work with closely are brilliant in that I can pick up the phone 1 a.m. in the morning and someone will be there, which I think is really nice. That helps. But that's also like finding the right people. You could argue that there's probably someone at Clayton that's like, it's important, especially when it comes down to like what we're doing at this level, where van building is a really intimate process. Like, you're building something that ultimately costs quite a lot of money for somebody that is going to use it and plans to use it in a certain way. If something goes wrong, we are like the first port of call, and kind of rightfully so. And therefore it should be looked after, you know. So you've got a responsibility to deal with the thing, and that comes with quite a lot of stress. But
It does. I've seen again that at the coalface. So we hire vehicles out, which we originally had fitted with Renogy stuff, and we've had a few minor issues, but in general it's been all right. I think with the Clayton stuff, we've had customers phone us at the weekend. To be honest, a lot of the issues that I tend to fix are them doing their electrics. It's nothing to do with the Clayton. It's to do with certain things
Well, that's largely the case.
Exactly, and that's that can be frustrating, but you've kind of got to roll with it a little bit. And the biggest thing I keep saying is I am not an electrician. I sell Clayton units, and I'm a fan, and I'm a self-taught person.
They're much the same as we are.
So you got to be. I think if you're honest with that, then I think that's 100%. One of the best ways to be.
Yeah, we found like the more upfront you can be, like being a van builder, you have to be relatively good at all the things involved. You're not like a master at one. You kind of don't really like that term, but like you have to be okay and above board at most things. You then bring in people to be like, okay, that's signed off. It's just about it's managing people's expectations of what that is. So, and then who's got to deal with it? Me at 1 a.m. And rightfully so. Do you know what I mean? So just do it right.
You've got to kind of be confident in what you put out, and basically know you've done the best that you could have done. And then
there's so many times where there's been parts and I've like held a part in my hand and been like, that feels a bit shit. Like, it really happens all the time, and I'm like, would I put that in my van and would I feel comfortable? It could be anything. Tap. Whatever. In fact, tap's a really good example, because by design, camper van taps are shit. You know what I mean?
So that's a perfect example of how I think things are changing for the better. So there's a lot of standardised sinks and hobs or taps. And things where you go, and there was almost this acceptance that that's just how they are. That's just how motorhome things are. That instance, I think that's totally changing. Yeah,
but I think that's probably in alignment with probably everything else though outside of camper vans in the world. Because I think the more people become aware that like it's important to buy relatively good first time, and then you don't have to buy 6 taps. They all keep breaking. With us, it's the shower trays, and like. And it's no disrespect, because we had a bit of heat from one company for like maybe not outing, maybe the wrong term, but we said that, some certain trays aren't perhaps as good, maybe wrong terminology, but like we know that stainless steel is a thing. We know that it can't leak unless it's badly welded, which we obviously check for anything. So we've built this thing where we're trying to fill a void. You're trying to like evolve a product that already exists into something that actually can sustain a life on a bumpy road, you know what I mean? Like, and just doing it properly.
For our van, a shower tray turned up, and I was like to Kate, I said, "Fucking hell, have you seen this? Look at the state of this." It was like, it was. I mean, it was bad.
Really?
It was really flimsy, and then you like go back over the YouTube videos, and you're like, "Oh, everyone frames it out," and I'm like, "Yeah, but even framing it out, like, what?"
That's the thing, and then you're kind of like, I feel like. Shower tray, some things are really unpoliced in the campervan industry, and you're like, this thing made out of fiberglass or whatever it might be, plastic, usually really thin plastic, of course it's going to break. It's got nothing underneath it. And then if Alex, who's built his first van, puts this in and doesn't understand where the weight's going to be, it's going to crack. And what we don't want people to have to do, because they put money into these things, like if it's a DIY enthusiast, it's usually like, it's not just money, it's time. That shit you can't, as well as you can't get back.
So this is how the conversation happened with me and Katie went. When the thing arrived, she was like, well, you can just put wood around it. And I was like, if you drop the shower head, that's 100%. So then everything's got to be cut out and replaced. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. We went down a different solution.
Yeah.
But to be honest, when we were doing ours, we'd have probably gone for like, I know, either stainless steel or black powder coating, because our van's black. I love that. I think that's where, if you look at what the increase in terms of magnetic fittable blinds, and like there's a lot of things changing in the industry where the vans all of a sudden feel very different. I mean, it's looking at Ape, and I was like, in the rear windows, like you've got this beautiful wood, the way it all goes in on the reveals, and then he's got this kind of like leatherette type thing with stitching in there. And I was like, there's not a stitch out of place. And then, don't get me wrong, the stuff that I've seen online, and you go and see stuff in person, it's just like not great. Like, it's probably obviously been shot a certain way. Whereas there's certain van builders you go and see, you're like, the quality's just unreal.
they're
It's
doing
like
it.
Sean, all the mule stuff.
Yeah.
Like when you look at that, it's like that is an art form, and I felt the same today. I mean, this thing that you've built is just unreal.
Yeah,
This is
it's cool.
what we sat in for Patagonia.
Yeah.
It's just the quality, the craftsmanship is undeniable.
Time. No, I think not just me that appreciates you saying that, so thank you, but I know that everybody, I try really hard because I like kind of do some of the Instagram stuff back end, and we get quite nice comments every now and then, and I really do try and like share those, because I think it's important that like people are like, oh, this stuff's really cool, or it's well made, or that, you know, structurally, like, you guys have got a great eye, and it's nice to share that and make people, because that's the bit, like, that's why we're doing it. This isn't like a I mean, like, I'm not in this for making a load of money, you know. At the same time, it's not a charity, but like, I'm genuinely like, I want to make something cool. Our staff do it too, and we want to leave, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's the thing with the proper craftsman. It really radiates through. It screams, because what I get asked off other van builders. Yeah. Oh, what? Because I'd looked in 8 vans, and I'd looked. You know, when you go to the shows and you look in certain vans, and you go to speak to them, it's like, oh, is it as good on Instagram? So you get that question. Yeah. And I think that's the thing, is like when you turn up and then you start to see millimetre. Yeah. I'm not saying for one thing that you've made no mistakes. I'm sure to find one if I really looked very hard. But it's just that thing that when you look at certain van builds and the workmanship, it just looks millimetre perfect. Like everything's done right, and again, it's almost like there's something there that you can't really buy, and that's taste.
Yeah, 100%.
It's that craftsmanship with taste, which is that kind of design side of things that just shines through.
You can go mad. We've got a bit of a thing that we like coined. If it's like, there's some stuff that'll be like, shit, that's out, and we'll look at it and we'll spend 5 or 6 seconds looking at it, and we'll be like, does it affect it enough for us to be like, to slow the ship down? Because ultimately people want stuff finished. But if we would spend forever in here, like, you'd find stuff that's like, oh, that's out slightly. But also, you just got to let a few things be like, that's okay, man. Like, you know, there's stuff that I've made mistakes on, that staff, and you're like, part of you is like, shit, that sucks. But at the same time, you're like, yeah, we're fucking learning how to do stuff. You know what I mean? Like, nobody's made that before. Like, you know, you're the first person to, and then you just got to, if it's too bad, it gets redone. Like, okay, it's cool, let's just move on and maybe try not to do it again. Yeah. We don't do it again. You know?
And there's that sort of thing of, my dad was very much, you know, I think there was a Steve Jobs story or something like that about he said, oh, go and have a look at the back of the fence. So there was a fence with a fence against it, so there was no reason to paint the back of the fence. He's like, no, go and have a look at the back of the fence. And then the back of the fence had been painted. No one will ever see it, but it was painted.
Oh mate, paint the fence.
And my dad was the same, and I'd be like, well, but no one's ever going to see it. So I fall between the line of practicality and everything that you can see.
You've got a good, that's a good balance.
But good balance.
Yeah.
Because that can send you a bit loopy, can't it?
It can. I think it depends. It becomes like, if you're like a DIY enthusiast that's building something, there's a limit, right? I don't think you need to paint the back of the fence all the time, or behind the radiator, whatever it might be. We build things. So we always say it, and it's kind of annoying. But it's like, if someone takes it to bits in like 10 years, we want them to be like, wow, they really built this thing. You know what I mean? Like, we're not just below these boards, we're not just chucking up boards. Like, we're trying to like strategically place them so you can have a screw. I mean, you can't see any screws. You know what I mean? Like, there's 20, and it's important, you know, like, it's, you just, without being too, because it's anal, and then there's like...
I think there's ranges, like, if say I've got a number of screws near each other, I will try and make sure all the screws are like, you know, all in an X or all in a plus.
Okay,
thing. You know, I'll do stuff like that.
Oh, we won't do that.
Oh,
no.
Yeah, but
our
I will
screws
do that.
will be equally parked. They'll be bang on.
But equally, like the backs of my overhead lockers have still got no. They've still got the backs in. You still see the wires, which I'm fine with. But everyone's
what you want, can't you?
This is what I mean. Everyone's got like everyone picks the fights basically,
exactly.
and everyone's got like the morals around what they want to do around the sort of almost like the morals of their design.
We actually have that. Strangely. Yeah, what's nice is that there's 4 or 5 of us here. Some of the guys are part time, but we all have a point of view on what we believe quality should be, and collectively. Like, it comes to you know, we jam on, if something's out or if something's wrong or if we have a problem, 3 or 4 of us will get together and we'll say what makes the most sense to kind of overcome that thing. You're right, you have to pick your battles. You have to say what's gonna. I'm a big advocate for like the progress over the perfection conversation. Like you will get it. Okay, it looks like this time. It will be better the next time because we've had this conversation. We've got like a thing on the wall, and it's kind of like this isn't a corporate entity. Do you know what I mean? It's like me and a few mates. But we have this like thing on the wall that's just is like what we give a shit about, which we collectively put information into, and nicely they all. It's almost like we read each other's things, but they're all kind of the same thing. Do you know what I mean? Like the end goal is always to like something leaves here, and we're like, that was fucking dope. Like we're okay with that thing being in the wild. It's kind of like.
Well, it's like I mean, obviously, within branding and workshops, we do a lot around brand values,
of course,
and what are your kind of guiding principles. End, So it's kind of like you've got those which are important because how everyone's different and has the different sort of slants. It's like that Venn diagram. It's like, where do we all overlap? Where do we hold the barometer to in terms of what we're trying to achieve? And I think that's what's great about values or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because it's kind of corny at the same time, but like you've got to have them. Like they're the same values that I have at home. You know what I mean? They're the same shit. It doesn't change. Even like it's like accountability, responsibility. You know, if you have those filtering through what you do, you're not going to drill through a wire and just put the panel back. You're going to replace. You know what I mean? Because it's not even about safety at that point. It's about like what do you hold
pride,
yourself for?
You know. Yeah, it's how do you hold yourself? 100%. How do you value yourself?
We tell like the guys and myself included. Like I'm a big fan of like if you made a mistake, and it's like big enough, just come and say something to us, or collectively we'll have a chat about it and we'll try and fix it. Because the last thing, it doesn't do anything nice if like somebody's made a mistake and they feel terrified to be like, oh, I've put a scratch down the worktop. Like I'd rather them feel like it's okay to chat about it than the feeling of them being like, I can't say that. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I used to have that with the creative agency. It's kind of leave the opportunity for learning open, and mistakes are inevitable,
100%,
and part of that. So if a business can embrace mistakes and learn from it, then it becomes better.
100%.
If you're trying to sweep everything under the carpet, then
it can't.
Causes issues.
It's weird also because we make vans, but then there's so much back, running a business, and it's stuff that perhaps I didn't know pre-leaving my other jobs, but there's like running a business. This thing is one thing visually, but then there's a whole other situation that has to happen back end, be kind of across other shit people can't see. It's like it's trying to just be as good at that bit as you are that front bit that people see. Because if you're building a house, if your foundation's a bit shit, the whole thing is going to fall down.
What's the future holding for Roamerworld? What have you got sort of planned? Is there anything you would want to share?
Can't see past the front door. I mean, we're just going to keep doing what we're doing. I think we want to keep doing this type of work for some distance. There are like plans at the moment for perhaps more standardized approach to some things, but not like we're not going to change the business so that it becomes like so it's not that there's anything wrong with that, but.
So pretty much more of the same, but keep with the little ergonomic kind of like
just streamlining the processes back end, I think, so that it becomes more comfortable for people to work here versus because we're busy. You know what I mean? Like, and I'd rather us be less busy, potentially earn less money, but also just be able to go to the fucking peaks. We live in the countryside. You know what I mean? It's all well and good as like talking about this lifestyle, but I'm like holding a fuel tank up. You know what I mean?
So a little bit more of a push on the process and streamlining to give you a bit more of a life balance.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know when it's going to happen, but we'll see.
Well, nice. Well, thanks for talking to me.
No, it's
been a pleasure to come here today.
I've enjoyed talking to you. I appreciate the time.